At the rehearsal, my son-in-law's voice carried through a live mic. Tell her to know her place. Keep her off any stage. My chest tightened, but I stood tall. Decades of sacrifice, teaching me silence can be stronger than shouting. That night, instead of tears, I drew one neat line through their contract and paused the very booking they bragged about. They thought the humiliation ended with that mic, when in truth the real story was just beginning. Before I continue the story, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment, letting me know where you're watching from. The kettle ticked in my kitchen while the sun slid across the oak table. I opened my laptop for something simple, a hold notice for my daughter's venue, and saw it arrive. Riverside Oaks subject line, hold date confirmation. I breathed, remembering Lacey at 5, twirling a curtain tie like a veil. I clicked. The page looked harmless date room capacities. Then a thin, italic sentence pressed itself against my ribs. Provisional hold contingent upon guarantor letter, bride's mother by Friday 5 p.m. The steam lifted from the spout. I underlined the sentence with a pencil, printed the email, and set the page under the refrigerator magnet shaped like a bluebonnet. Hold date, hold power, I thought. And power, I have learned, lives in the small print. A widow learns to read footnotes the way a sailor reads clouds. By Friday 5 o'clock, someone expected my signature to turn a courtesy into a commitment. I sipped, felt the cup warm my palm, and let the implications settle. A mother's love translated into collateral. Not today. The header misspelled me. Marjorie, not Mora. A small thing, except names are fences. They keep livestock from wandering and strangers from walking through you. I opened a reply, kept my tone warm, my edges straight. Hi, Shannon, 2 quick items for your records. First, my legal name is Maura Hale. Second, to avoid confusion, I'm not the guarantor for this event. Please correct the file. I read it twice, removed 1 exclamation point, and hit send. The sun dipped. The room cooled. My name back where it belongs. My boundary on the page. A minute later, the outbox chimed a neat little bell that sounded like dignity. I dated my printed copy and slid it behind the first page. Paper remembers when people choose not to. My phone buzzed. Lacey Mom. Its standard paperwork keeps things smooth. I could hear her PR voice, the one that sands every edge before it meets an audience. I typed slowly. Honey, I'll help in ways that are ethical and practical. I won't act as guarantor. A typing bubble appeared, disappeared, returned. Okay, appreciate you. A heart emoji followed, and I smiled at the habit of her kindness, even when it asks too much. Love can be both true and misplaced. I set the phone face down to cool the temperature inside my chest. Before the streetlights came on, I opened a new tab and searched the venue. Press photos bloomed glass limestone and a donor wall that glowed like morning on water. Names etched in bronze marched across the image legacy, arranged alphabetically. I saved the picture to my desktop, a tidy square among photos of my garden and old tax folders. Credits are a currency, I thought, and currency has rules. I inhaled the peppermint from my tea and felt my shoulders settle. Houston moved outside my window, buses exhaled a stroller, rattled the sidewalk, and a siren unwound somewhere beyond the oaks. I watched until the sky went from apricot to steel. The phone rang with a cheerful sales cadence. Shannon Greer with Riverside Oaks, she sang. This a good time it was. We confirmed the ballroom and the tentative schedule. She promised a draft agreement by Thursday morning. I listened for the line that mattered. There's just a provisional clause until we receive a guarantor letter. She added light as whipped cream. I'll need all financial requests by email, I said, matching her light with structure. For accuracy. Of course, she said. We love organized families. I smiled at the ceiling. So do I. After we hung up, I blocked out Friday at 4:45 on my calendar and labeled it not in anger, but an ink contingent clause review. The printer warmed as if it knew what kind of week this would be. I keep a cabinet of labeled spines, birthdays, mortgages, Harlan's medical notes, taxes by year. I slid in a new binder, Lacey Venue Records. The printer fed out a second copy of the hold email. I stamped the date wrote in block letters on a yellow sticky and pressed it to the inside cover. Not a guarantor. The tape made a small, satisfied sound. I exhaled with it. Order is my way of reminding the world and myself that I'm still here. Grief taught me to file before I feel. It isn't cold. It's how I stay warm without burning. An email pinged bright as a bell in a church foyer. Lacey forwarded a digital invitation to a gala at the museum, the same campus as the venue. "Mom, please come," she wrote. "Stand by the donor wall so people can find us." I pictured myself as a human landmark, a coat tree with a pulse. I counted to 5 before answering, happy to attend. "I'll be there on time," I typed. No smiley faces, no hedging. Across the room, the donor wall photo on my desktop thumbnail seemed to watch me back. I closed the laptop and let silence take attendance of what was left unsaid. Night gathered softly outside. I returned the printed email to the fridge and brushed my fingers across the small safe by the pantry, Harlan's initials engraved in nickel from the year we thought retirement would come easy. "I'll help," I whispered to the dark room, "but I won't disappear." The house answered with the friendly groan of old pipes. I turned off the light, the blue bonnet magnet holding our boundary in place, and let the hum of Houston carry me toward sleep. By the donor wall, if that's what they need to see, I will stand. But I will not sign away my name to be there. I'll be there on time by the donor wall if that's what they need to see. The museum district glowed the way Houston does when the heat finally loosens its grip, soft and a little theatrical. I eased from the valet line and smoothed the lapel of my navy jacket. Under the fabric, my pulse kept a metronome beat. I checked my blouse pin Mora in clean brass letters. The printed hold email rested in my purse like a quiet stone, not a weapon, just a reminder. I breathed in the citrus of my own hand cream, and the faint petrol outside told myself to walk in as if... Inside a trio played an agreeable jazz standard. Waiters floated by with sparkling water and tiny crab cakes balanced on slate. The first thing I saw wasn't the band or flowers, but a travertine wall honey-lit, carved with donors built to outlast the evening. Names sat at tidy intervals. People stopped to point as if the stone dispensed blessings. I stood at a respectful distance, present, not inner... A microphone cracked. Friends the MC sang all charm tonight is possible because of extraordinary support from the bride's side and our community. Polite applause rippled. Cameras framed Darley's smile as if she were a benefactor. No one said my name. I kept my face open and neutral as if the sentence landed exactly where it should. The band resumed. Behind the clapping, my pride folded and sat down in my ribs. QR placards glittered at each place setting. I lifted one, scanned, and a menu bloomed on my phone. Rosé options, a vegan entree, a neat footer for optics. Then the small bruise, donor bride's mother, TBD. Not a name, just a position, an IOU. The woman beside me peeked. "Oh," she said, "kind as a paper cut. That must be you. It's a formatting error," I answered, voice even. She nodded, eager to pretend it wasn't real. I let the page dim and set the... I found Lacey by the floral installation, all glass and pale orchids. Her face was practiced serenity from years of clients and cameras. "Mom," she murmured, kissing the air near my cheek, "everything looks better than the mock-ups." I agreed. Then she lowered her voice. "Tonight's about impressions. If anything is off, we can adjust tomorrow. Please let it be smooth." "Smooth," I said, "requires truth. The QR footer has me listed as TBD. I've already requested it be removed." She swallowed, nodded, and looked past me to the photographer. Darley materialized near the donor wall with silk chiffon calm. For symmetry, she said, touching my elbow as if aligning furniture, "Why don't you stand just off-center? Guests will find us faster." Her smile was generous and directional. I stepped back half a foot on purpose outside her geometry. "I'm fine here," I said. Her eyes cooled a degree, then warmed for the camera again. The flash popped. The wall did not blink. Near the tech booth, I found the planner Aileen headset tablet, the look of a person living in 3 screens at once. A small housekeeping note, I said tone-friendly professional. The QR menu footer lists, bride's mother TBD. Please update to remove that line. Also, any requests regarding payment or guarantees, send by email for my records. Aileen gave me the agreeable nod used to deflect parents and principals. We'll review. Thank you, I said, and smiled the way you do, The evening learned my pace. I spoke with a docent about a ceramics exhibit, admired the lighting on a suspended sculpture, accepted sparkling water, and declined gossip. Every so often I glanced at the wall and thought of names as anchors. Some hold, some sink. The QR line remained unchanged. I filed that fact in the same drawer as the misnamed emails and the smooth reminders labeled dated set aside for daylight. When the toasts began, the MC lifted his glass to the families who make moments like this possible. I lifted mine too and let the words slide past like boats on the bayou, pleasant and unmoored. String lights outside made hedges look like polite constellations. I felt the old ache of wanting to be seen and the newer calm of not needing to be staged to exist. By the valet curb, the air was cooler than it had any right to be. I typed a note, QR footer, donor bride's mother TBD. Request correction via email at 9 a.m. Ask for version history. The city hummed. Across the street, someone laughed too loudly. I tucked my purse under my arm and imagined rehearsal, the quiet places where titles get assigned the corners, where vendors slip badges to people who aren't vendors. Documentation would be my escort, not resentment. Before my car pulled up, I looked in through glass. Volunteers peeled tape, erasing the night inch by inch. Nothing dramatic, just the reset a production requires. I've planned enough auctions and funerals to know the rhythm applause clean up truth. After lights work shows who did what and who only posed. Yes. I handed the valet my ticket and checked the pin on my blouse one more time. The brass letters caught a slice of streetlight. Little things hold. I wasn't angry. Anger is loud and leaves prints. What I felt was steadier, the kind of resolve you don't have to announce to make it true. If they want optics, I'll give them clarity on paper where spin doesn't breathe. They handed me a badge that didn't say mother. It said vendor. The plastic rectangle swung against my blouse. I steadied it with 2 fingers and kept my breath even. The check-in table hummed with small talk and the click of lanyards. Clipboards lay in neat stacks labeled Family Vendors Press. I waited my turn like any adult who knows patience is a form of power, not surrender. Name, the staffer asked without looking up. Maura Hale, I said. He scrolled, frowned, then lifted a lanyard from the vendor's stack. This will get you everywhere you need tonight. Everywhere I need. I smiled kindly. Thank you. The smile was for him. The note I wrote in my head was for later. The hall sounded like a polite storm chair scraping mic pops. Aileen the planner breezed past with a tablet. Her eyes skimmed my badge. That should work for tonight, she said, and kept moving. I centered the badge and lifted my phone. One clear photo, time-stamped. Records breathe better than people do. An easel near the aisle held the seating plan printed on foam board. Names in tidy rows, color-coded circles, a legend at the bottom. I found mine third row end seat. A small sticker overlapped the circle beside Maura Hale in red vendor. The floor captain followed my gaze. Temporary, she said. We're aligning zones. She said it the way people say weather will pass. I stepped closer and took 2 photos, one tight on my name with the sticker, one wide including the legend. Evidence is calmer than anger. Back of house smelled of paint and coffee. I stood near the AV console to text Lacey that I was here and fine. Voices rose behind the curtain. Israel's tenor, polished professional, met Aileen's brisk yeses. Run of show, line 26, he said low but clear. We need to keep Mom off stage. Optics matter. A beat, then the rustle of paper. Agreed, Aileen answered. We'll stage her by the floral wall. The words lifted like a cold wind under my coat. I reread Lacey's last message. Tonight's about impressions, just let it be smooth. Smooth, I wrote back once before needs truth. I memorized the phrasing I had heard. Keep mom off stage, optics matter. Exact words are anchors when storms arrive. Lacey found me by the roses near the wing, her smile fixed. Mom, you made it, she said, voice tuned for cameras. Everything's moving fast, it usually does, I said. Can you help by not making it complicated? Israel is stressing. We want the story to land right. Clarity isn't complication, I answered. It's the reason stories land at all. She touched my arm light as breath. Thank you for understanding. I stepped back so she could float to the next crisis, loving her and refusing to disappear for her. On stage, the MC tapped his mic and read a bare-bones checklist. Run through, only no names, he said. He glanced at a sheet lips forming the start of my first name and then moving on. A near miss that still whistled past the ear. I let it pass me, not through me. At a catering station, I asked for water and a quiet edge to stand on. The servers had that quick grace I remember from my own working years seeing, without staring, helping, without hovering. I emailed myself the photo's subject line, labeling discrepancy badge, plus seating. In the body, I typed what the images proved. Badge reads, vendor. Seating chart overlays same label on family seat. Request correction via email tomorrow. Send. In the corridor again, Aileen hurried by. We'll have family badges tomorrow, she said, smiling too bright. Tonight's just logistics. Please send the credential list by email, I replied. I'll confirm my status in writing. Of course, she said, already walking. A staffer waved me toward a row for run-through seating. The sticker still clung to my name card when I reached it. I peeled it off, folded it twice, and slipped it into my purse. Not to throw away evidence rarely belongs in a trash can. It belongs where it can be found if someone needs a reminder of what happened and how politely it was endured. Israel took the stage to rehearse a welcome. His suit looked sharper than his empathy. He spoke about generosity, vision, community, words that mean everything and nothing depending on who is allowed to stand beside them. I watched his hands while he spoke. He gestures when he sells. He points when he decides. He didn't point toward the wings where mothers wait. I texted Lacey once more, love you, here if needed. She sent a single heart. I put my phone away and counted backward from 10 until my pulse steadied. The badge on my chest felt heavier than plastic, lighter than shame. Outside, the night had cooled. Cars rolled past in a river of headlights. I sat on the steps and drafted an email to the venue. Subject, family credentials and seating labels. Dear Riverside Oaks team. Please record my status accurately as mother of the bride. Current badge and seat labeling show vendor, which is incorrect. Kindly route all credential and donor attributions via email for confirmation. Thank you, Maura Hale. I sent it. The valet brought a sedan around. I didn't leave. I let the door stand open and listened to the echo of the hall. It sounded like what happens when people confuse a stage for a family. My breath steamed the night air. I laid a hand over the badge, then over my sternum, and felt the steady weight of both. If labels decide respect here, I'll change the labels on record. The sales suite smelled faintly of espresso and floor polish, a corporate sweetness that felt both inviting and sterile. Glass walls framed the oak trees, outside sunlight dappling the green in sharp patterns. Inside the table was already prepared a stack of contract packets. Branded pens neatly aligned the company's logo, watermarked into thick cream paper. Shannon Greer, the venue's sales manager, smiled with a professional briskness as she gestured me toward a chair. I lowered myself slowly, taking in the revision date at the top of the draft, May 5th, revised Tachatao PDF. I already knew where the trouble would sit, buried in the financial terms. I didn't flinch. I opened my folder, my own pens inside, and steadied my breath. Lacey and Israel lingered by the lobby alcove before we sat down. Israel's tone was smooth, just low enough not to echo. A simple guarantor letter keeps optics clean. He didn't look at me, his eyes fixed on the sliding glass doors as if the suggestion was routine. Lacey's nervous hand clutched her clutch tighter. Mom, she said softly, know your place. so this stays smooth. The words pressed like a fingerprint on glass light, but impossible to ignore. I felt my jaw tense, but I kept my face still, offering only a nod. Inside, the echo hurt. Not because Israel said it, but because she repeated it. We finally sat. Shannon flipped the packet open to financial terms. There it was in neat Arial font guarantor Mobi. A simple autofill, a line so casually typed it erased years of boundaries. I let the silence rest, underlined the clause lightly with my pen, then slid the page back toward Shannon without commentary. My heart steadied. Offense could burn. Calculation could cool it. I drew one deliberate line through the words, Guarantor MOB. Beneath it, in calm block letters, I wrote, Couples responsibility only. My voice matched my handwriting, measured firm. I'll need this reflected in revised 1 PDF, and I'll need confirmation by email with timestamp before close of business today. Shannon blinked once, then nodded quickly. My pen capped with a click, I sat back in my chair, spine against glass. Relief sharpened into steel. Aileen arrived with her laptop, a sheen of efficiency covering her late entrance. Israel hovered behind her, and Lacey stayed quiet beside him. Aileen spoke as though presenting a done deal. We've pitched a sponsor narrative that positions the mother of the bride as guarantor. It aligns with other venues' optics. Her eyes skimmed me, waiting for assent. I didn't blink. Please align narrative with signed documents, not assumptions. My tone didn't raise, but the temperature did. Silence pressed the room for a beat. Aileen's hand stilled on her keyboard. Shannon excused herself to her workstation. Moments later, the soft ping of an email left her screen. I watched the message pop into my phone, draft in progress. Subject line tagged with the revision number. All future financial references, I reminded her, should include version numbers and be sent to the group email. No texts, no DMs. She nodded, fingers moving again, CCing the names. Record. Always record. On my way to the restroom, Lacey caught me in the corridor. Her voice was quieter this time, almost pleading. Just know your place. I turned, looking at the daughter I raised. My reply was just as low. My place is mother, not guarantor. For a moment, she couldn't meet my eyes. She looked away, the silence between us louder than Israel's earlier whisper. Back at the table, phones chimed again. Shannon handed me a clean printout. At the bottom of page 3, the clause now read, Couples responsibility only. I forward-stamped it into my own record folder, renaming the subject line, Hold terms, not guarantor. Rising from the chair, I shook Shannon's hand politely. Outside, the Texas heat met me like a wall, but I felt cool, steady. They could keep their optics. I had my sentence signed, time-stamped, and mine. Aileen tilted her laptop so the wall screen caught every bevel and shadow. The sales suite smelled faintly of espresso and lemon cleaner. A branded pen rolled toward me as I set my notepad down. I didn't come for theater. I came to see the story they were selling and writing. Shannon stood beside the screen with her tablet ready to advance slides. I eased my glasses down my nose and let the first page blink into focus. Riverside Oaks sponsorship opportunities, a parade of fonts trying to make money look like confetti. Decks like this always confess something. If you watch long enough, they tell you who's expected to pay. The second slide landed with a soft chime. Led Donner Bride's mother committed. The words sat there clean and decisive, as if my checkbook had already stood up and taken a bow. I gave the screen 3 breaths of silence so no one could say I'd overreacted. Then I said evenly, remove my name. I am not the guarantor nor a lead donor. Israel hovered at the door with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Lacey's knuckles pressed white around her phone. Aileen's trackpad paused half a second, then resumed. Of course, Aileen said. That was based on earlier conversations. We have a document newer than conversation, I replied. Revised 1. The sentence reads, Couples responsibility only. I didn't raise my voice. Shannon tapped her tablet, and there it was on the wall, yesterday's email thread with the PDF attached, time-stamped by the venue server. The room changed temperature. Feelings are negotiable. Timestamps aren't. Aileen returned to the deck. We'll export a clean version, she said, fingers busy. No issue. Before you export, I said open file, then properties. She did. In the metadata fields, the ghost sat exactly where I expected it. Guarantor MOB. A field no guest would ever see. A field that writes checks without ink. Please prepare revise to with donor fields blanked and the properties corrected, I said. Then send by reply all. No links that expire. I watched the word MOB disappear from the panel like a stain sponged from fabric. Israel stepped into the hall with me, while Shannon went to her workstation. We're just trying to keep it smooth, he said, voice honeyed with patience. Smooth is truthful, I answered. Truth runs on paper. Text can be quicker. Email is clearer. He let out a small laugh, the kind you use when you're deciding whether to push or pivot. You know optics matter, Maura. I know agreements matter. I opened the door for myself and left him standing between two versions of the evening one that asked me to be grateful for the staging and one that required grown adults to read what they sign. Shannon's message arrived with the soft ping every mother learns to recognize from the other room. Subject revised to sponsorship deck. The PDF opened clean. Slide 3 no longer claimed a lead donor. The footer read donor placement subject to signed agreement by the couple. In properties, the fields were scrubbed. No phantom guarantor, no mob. I forwarded the file to my own archive with a title I could find in the dark, lacy venue deck clean. Aileen reappeared, smile trimmed and professional. We're aligned, she said. Glad we could resolve. Alignment is a first step, I said. Compliance is the walk. In the hallway, Leslie drifted close enough that her perfume reached me before her words did. Mom, thank you, she whispered. Then the old PR reflex flickered. It's just easier when things look settled. They look settled when they are settled, I said as gently as I could with truth, still cooling on the glass. I'm here to help you do this the right way. She nodded, eyes wet, and for a heartbeat I saw the girl who once brought me paper napkins tied with ribbon as menus for a backyard tea. She wasn't cruel. She was crowded by optics, by timelines, by a husband who thinks smooth requires silence from mothers. I stepped into the Houston heat and leaned against the shade line of a live oak. The parking lot hummed compressors, cicadas, a delivery truck beeping somewhere beyond the hedges. I wrote a note to myself, optics change, documents hold. Then I added the plan for tonight monitor, after-hours messages answer only by email, keep the trail intact. By the time I reached my car, a new notification pulsed. Group thread. Shannon confirming that all sponsor language would be circulated by reply all, no DMs. I replied with one sentence that fit in the subject line acknowledged. Across the street, a bride in a white jumpsuit posed for photos beneath a bronze sculpture. She laughed, head thrown back, and the sound found me the way memories do sideways. I thought of Harlan's initials engraved on our small home safe, the place where I keep birth certificates, passports, and the few letters that taught me how to breathe again after he was gone. This belonged there too, a boundary set in a sentence ordinary and invincible. I set my phone to do not disturb for everything, except that thread and my attorney's number. Habit, not threat? Preparation is the half of love. I filed a paper copy in a red folder, the color I use for boundaries, and left a sticky on the cover, couple pays, mom witnesses. Now, at home, I'd print 2 copies, check toner ordinary armor I trust. If they want to push after hours, they'll find only one door open email with a timestamp. The ping arrived at 11 p.m., a blue flare in the corner of my screen. I was in my West University home office with only the desk lamp on a cone of light across the same oak surface where I'd signed field trip forms and mortgage papers. The notification previewed his words without my consent. We need that letter tonight, know your place. I didn't open the message. I clicked away from the private channel he preferred and opened a fresh email to the entire group. Subject line, financial documentation. I let the kettle hiss while I typed in calm, full sentences. All financial requests regarding Riverside Oaks must be conducted via this address, I wrote. Any direct messages, texts, or calls outside this thread will be documented as improper and disregarded. For clarity, I am not the guarantor. I CC'd Lassie Aileen, and Shannon added Israel last and pressed send. The timestamp landed like a small gavel. I set the mug down, muted the phone, and felt the first quiet inch of my house expand again around. The email answered something in me that had gone small at the gala and the rehearsal, but a line in a message would not be enough. I pulled a blank template from my files, a notice I had once adapted for a neighbor who needed to draw a boundary around a remodel gone sideways. I changed the name, the dates, the parties, the venue. I inserted a single sentence that said the thing I had been living for weeks. Any funds, if offered, are discretionary gifts, contingent upon the honored maternal role. They do not. The night felt shorter after that. I slept with the phone on the dresser and woke before the sun, as I have since Harlan died, with a list already forming on the walk from bed to kitchen. By noon, the heat had settled over Houston in its usual forgiving way. I drove to my bank branch on Kirby and stood in a lobby that smelled faintly like paper and lemon. I asked the teller to transfer the entire wedding set aside into a protected savings account with withdrawal restrictions, one that would require my in. "Would you like any other documentation, Ms. Hale?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "A notary?" At the small counter by the potted fern, the notary checked my license and pressed her stamp over my signature on the notice of non-responsibility and non-guarantor status. The sound was satisfying, an honest thunk of rubber meeting paper. I asked for a second stamp on the duplicate for the venue's records. She obliged with the kind of care people offer when they can tell a document is doing more than paperwork. It is doing the work of dignity. I fed the pages through the branch scanner and sent them to me. Back home, the house was quiet except for the hum of the printer as it produced one more clean copy for the red binder on my bookshelf. I opened a new email addressed to Travis, the venue manager, whose name Shannon had mentioned in a prior chain. "Please acknowledge receipt of the attached notice I wrote, keeping the words simple. All further financial references should remain on this thread." I attached the notarized PDF, added the bank receipt as an image, and CC'd the same list as the night before. I poured tea while the outbox spun, then set my palm on the safe and felt the engraved initials there. Harlan's initials worn smooth from a decade of my thumb. I opened it and pulled out his last letter, the one I keep above the insurance policy, and below a photograph of Lacey in her Little League jersey. I read the same line I always read when I am tempted to explain myself to people who prefer me silent. Our gift celebrates your place, not erases it. I slid the letter back and laid the new notice acrow. By evening, the inbox showed my message pinned at the top of the thread, the attachments sitting like little anchors. No reply yet. That was fine. Silence can be a boundary when you've already said what needed saying in the right place. I set a new rule on my phone that archived every direct message after 10 flagged venue emails as VIP and turned the ringer off. Outside, the cicadas began their high electric hymn. In the kitchen, the timer chimed 3 minutes, and I lifted the tea bag steady hand of. I walked the hallway once before bed, past the framed certificate from a school board I'd served, past a photograph of my parents on their porch in Abilene, past the mirror where I have learned to count to 5 before speaking. I did not rehearse a speech for anyone. I did not write a paragraph to convince a man who likes optics more than facts. I simply set the folder on the desk and clicked the lamp off. Before I slept, I logged into the bank website and matched the numbers on the paper to the ledger on the screen. I renamed each file with the date and time, notice received and receipt, 1802, then dragged them into the folder labeled Lacey Venue Records. I printed one small, neat label for the spine of the red binder, the kind you can read from across the room. I also addressed one envelope to the venue manager, Travis Morgan, Riverside Oaks, and slid a printed copy of the notice and the bank receipt inside just in case email lagged the way manners sometimes do. I set the envelope on the hall table where I would see it with my keys, wrote tomorrow's date in the corner, and underlined the time 6:02 p.m. so I could match it to the receipt without thinking. I signed my name with my own pen, a small ballpoint I keep clipped inside my purse. The young woman at the rehearsal table slid a clipboard toward me and asked if I needed a lanyard. "I'm all set," I said, and smiled the sort of smile that says, "I'll handle my own identification. Could I have a printed run of show?" She tapped the printer. It hummed and spit a warm sheet. I thanked her, tucked the badge string into my pocket, and stepped aside to read. The hallway lights hummed. On the page, every moment was neatly gridded greeting grooming bridal party lineup. Groom's parents' tribute sat safely at 6:20. Bridal party introductions marched in at 6:35. Then the timeline jumped to couples toast, as if the air itself would speak for a mother. I looked again, ran my finger down the column, then photographed the page. The footer showed a tiny timestamp and version number. Paper doesn't blush. It just tells you what is. Inside the ballroom, the AV crew checked microphones. Joran, the MC, walked the stage with a tablet and a cheerful voice made for auctions. "We'll line the vendors to my left," he called, then half-glanced my way. "Margaret." He stopped, corrected himself without looking up. "Marjorie, can you stand by the wings?" I kept my face still. My notebook caught the moment, 5:52 p.m., 2 misnames, no corrections requested. I have learned that stillness is a pen with better ink. Near the side aisle, the venue manager Travis observed in that attentive way that belongs to people whose job is order. He watched the MC skip over the gap where mother of the bride should sit and met my eyes for a quiet second. I lifted the run of show slightly the way you do when you mean to speak but won't. He nodded once and turned toward the lobby. His office was small, practical, and kind to forms. I laid the printed timeline on his desk and pointed to the neat space where a slot should be. "I'd like to log what just happened," I said. Of course, he answered, opening a template on his screen. "Guest of record misidentified," he typed "maternal tribute omitted from program draft." He asked me to confirm the times. I did. He assigned a number IR41, printed 2 copies, and signed his name with the steady pressure of someone who knows signatures and... On my way out, Aileen paused at the threshold, the planner's smile already arranged. "Rehearsal is rehearsal," she said, light as confetti. "We'll smooth it." I kept my voice even. The venue logged it IR41. "Please align the program with your deck by morning." Her eyes flicked to the paper, then to the room where cameras waited. "We'll review," she said, already moving. By the coat room, Lassie found me. She looked like the little girl who used to ask if her hair bow sat straight except the bow was a phone she couldn't stop checking. "Mom, it's just..." She glanced toward Israel, who was talking to the florist about angles. The sentence folded. I spared her the rescue. "Fix the file, not the feeling," I said. "We'll both be better for it." She nodded, the kind of nod that wants to agree but fears an audience. I stepped into the dusk. Cicadas sawed at the warm air. In the parking lot, I slid IR41 into the red folder where I keep the notice and the bank receipt, the way a quilter tucks one more square into the pattern. I took a photo of the report number, then another of the run of show stamp. Peach light cooled toward steel. Somewhere behind me, a microphone popped and applause practiced itself on an empty room. They can ignore a woman in a corner. They can mispronounce a name until it fits their script. But a form number sits in a system and lights up when you search it. I drove home with the window cracked and the file heavy on the passenger seat, thinking of the line I crossed through Gorantor, the rule I said about email the savings I locked behind a timestamp. A mother can be edited out of a timeline. She cannot be edited out of the record. Back at the entrance, I wrote a brief memo on the back of the printout in tidy block letters. Omission observed. 2 misnames at mic. Witness venue manager present. I signed MH and drew a small box for the date. It's an old habit from hospital volunteer days. If you expect people to argue with your memory, bring them something they can photocopy. I also noted details most people forget. When they tell a story, the lanyards were generic white. The seating legend marked family and gold vendors in gray. The MC's exact phrase when he waved people left. Later, when folks insist feelings are slippery, I let nouns and timestamps carry the weight. Paper is better at honesty than pride. On the walk to my car, I rehearsed the sentence I use when tempers rise. Let's match the narrative to the documents. It keeps me from sharpening old hurts into weapons. I am not here to win applause, only to protect a boundary I shouldn't have to defend. At a red light, I dictated a voice note. Version V3 shows no MOB tribute slot. Miss name at 5:52 p.m. IR41 filed with manager. The phone saved it next to the notice and the bank photo. Order is a kindness I can give my future self, who may have to open a folder at a long table and speak softly in a room where others prefer a microphone. Before I pulled away, I dated the memo again and circled IR41 for emphasis. They could ignore me in a room. They could not ignore IR41 in their system. Unverified before breakfast. Travis's email slid onto my phone at 8:12 booking status, toggled to unverified program incomplete. It was the kind of line that looks small until it changes everyone's day. I set the mug down, opened my laptop, and replied without adjectives, acknowledged. Please send the updated timeline for today's tech. I added nothing about last night's incident report. IR41 could speak for itself. The revised file arrived 3 minutes later with brisk politeness trying to outrun a mistake. Aileen subject line, updated run of show final fonts. I downloaded, scrolled, and paused where the program should breathe. Groom's parents tribute. Bridal party introductions. A clean jump to couple's toast. Still no mother of the bride. New font, same hole. Footer timestamp 0901. I circled the gap and replied, all program remains incomplete. Please insert maternal tribute. Resend. By afternoon, the ballroom smelled of roses and gaffer tape. Tech day looks the same ladders like folded ribs coils of cable people, speaking in half sentences. I stood at the side aisle with my printouts. A young AV tech clipped a lav to Israel's jacket and handed him a belt pack. He tapped it like a toy. We're just testing, he told the air. The green light blinked alive. Joran shuffled cards at the mic. A low thrum rose from the board. Tell her to know her place, keep her off any, Mike Israel said lazy with certainty. The speakers carried every word. The tech winced and dove for the switch. A few heads snapped. Others stared at the floral arch. I corrected nothing. I looked at the clock, 13:42, and wrote it down clean numbers on a clean line. I photographed the ceiling speaker and let the room settle as if nothing had happened at all. I don't argue in rooms designed for echoes. I index. On my schedule, I added hot mic remark by groom-noted witnesses tech florist DJ and underlined the phrase he chose so easily, know your place. The words have a way of shrinking women until we practice forgetting our own names. I let them sit on the page and not in my throat. A coil of cable brushed my shoe. I stepped back and filed the feeling where it belongs under evidence. Travis saw the commotion without the commotion. In his doorway, he met my glance, not prying, just present. I held up the PDF and the timestamp. He waved me in. We stood beside his desk. They sent a revision, I said, but the omission remains. He frowned, opened the event file, and typed a red note, action required, verify maternal program slot. Policy has a sound when it lands, the soft thud of a decision that will outlast the flowers. The hallway buzzed. My phone buzzed too. An automatic notice from the venue system arrived with cheerful cruelty, vendors uncleared access 5 to 7 p.m. I was CC'd. No greeting, just the subject singing its wrongness. I forwarded it to Travis with, I am not vendor, please correct. I screenshotted the original and put the phone away like a tool. I also forwarded the notice to Planner's generic inbox so it couldn't vanish in a private thread, copied the venue manager, and tagged the subject with record. The CC line looked like parade of names. That was point. Paper prefers witnesses. My hands were steady. The room moved. I stayed still. I wrote the time on my palm in pencil, carefully. Now. At the floral arch, Lassie found me in the petal-scented hush that sits between scenes. We'll fix it, Mom, she murmured, sincerity caught in the weave of her voice. Across the room, Israel turned. Her voice thinned. Just Don't make it a thing. I thought of my folder screenshots, incident numbers, revised files with honest footers. Programs aren't feelings, I said, keeping my tone low. They're facts. She nodded and moved toward the planner. I returned to the manager's doorway with 2 exhibits, the hot mic time and the morning's final fonts that were final at everything except honoring a mother. Travis added another note and flagged the booking again. Unverified is not a threat. It is a request for truth that can be shown. Once the slot is inserted and distributed, he said we clear. I thanked him. I did not ask for favor. I asked for procedure. Evening flattened the heat. In the parking lot, the air smelled like dust and vase water. I sat in the car with the door cracked and typed a subject line that would file itself well. Status unverified pending maternal program. Slot. I attached the annotated timeline and the auto notice about vendors. I wrote 1 sentence. Please acknowledge correction by reply all prior to tomorrow's print. Send. The dashboard clock ticked. On the drive home, I kept the radio low. At a red light, I pictured my kitchen folder, the notice, the bank time-stamped receipt. IR 41, the clean, revised files. Evidence is not anger, it's a weather map. You look at the fronts and decide whether to carry an umbrella or cancel the picnic. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the map was plain as a high-pressure system. If they wanted optics, they could have them in the color of compliance. I set my phone on the counter and filled the kettle. The house held its evening sounds. I opened my laptop and watched the thread climb, Travis acknowledging receipt. Aileen saying reviewing. No apology offered, none requested. I created a subfolder labeled Day of Approvals, dragged the day's files inside and let them stack. My tea timer chimed. I let the bag steep and considered the chapter I was being written into. I have lived long enough to know the difference between silence that erases and silence that preserves. Tonight, I chose the second. I closed the laptop, walked to the window, and looked out at my street where porch lights came on like assurances. I am a mother. My place is not a line that can be edited out of a program. It is the ground the program stands on. They will see it when the paperwork says so. And if they don't, the paperwork will speak in my stead. Tonight they chose optics over a mother. Tomorrow the system will choose the truth it can verify. By noon, a lifestyle blog chose optics too, publishing a headline that spent my money for me. I was still in my robe coffee, not yet poured, when the tablet lit on the counter with a banner. I didn't write a promise I didn't make. Bride's mother secures Riverside Oaks as lead sponsor. It chirped in cheerful type, as if my name were a credit card that never declines. I set the tablet flat, steadied my breath, and did the only thing that matters before feeling screenshot, byline timestamp, URL bar. Proof first, reaction later. I carried the tablet to my desk and opened a new email to the editor listed in fine print. I copied the planner, the venue sales lead, the venue manager, my daughter, and my son-in-law. My fingers stayed level. I cited the contract amendment, couple's responsibility, only the cleaned file with blank donor fields, and my notarized notice of non-responsibility. I requested a retraction within 24 hours and asked that any corrections be posted with a visible timestamp and changelog. The reply chime did not come. Instead, Darlie's calendar invite slid in noon conference call with their PR firm. I ate 2 almonds, finally poured the coffee, and tapped in on speaker. Voices arrived bright and choreographed. Darlie thanked me for all you've done for the look, then offered the line that explained the whole mess. We'll post a note clarifying the family hierarchy remains intact, and optics will reflect it. I said evenly, hierarchy doesn't override signed terms. Silence held long enough to feel like weather. The PR rep proposed a soft correction post. I replied, correct the facts. Leave the spin out. Lacey had stayed quiet the way a good daughter is taught to keep a party calm. When the rep asked whether the couple agreed to the wording, she finally cleared her throat. We just need the look, Mom. I let the sentence land. You need the truth, I said. There was shuffling, then a promise to circle back public words for no decision today. After afternoon delivered a different noise, the automated kind. My phone buzzed with a system email addressed to vendors uncleared access, reissued for 5 to 7 p.m. My name sat in the CC string, like a tag pinned to the wrong coat. I forwarded the notice to Travis with a single line reissued after IR 41 and prior corrections. No anger, only the ledger. His reply arrived within minutes. Received. Reviewing with operations. The blog editor finally wrote back. They would update the headline to Family Secures Venue and add a line that funding details were confidential. It was not an apology. It was a pivot. I captured the before and after with screenshots and archived the changelog. Another email arrived from the PR firm with a draft caption, grateful for the bride's family for making magic happen. The magic apparently was my checkbook dressed up as kinship. I replied with the language already in place. No donor claims no maternal hierarchy. No images implying sponsorship by proximity. I attached the amended files again and kept the note short enough to be undeniable nouns and dates, not adjectives. By early evening, I stood at the kitchen sink watching the thin sunline creep across the counter Harlan used to call our sundial. The house felt like a held breath. I thought about Lacey at 8 staging living room shows, where she cast me as the audience and herself as every single role. I clapped then, because imagination is a muscle. I won't clap now for a design that erases the mother and calls it style. At 6, the vendor system coughed again, another uncleared notice with the same cheerful formatting. I forwarded the repeat with the same economy reissued second time today. Travis called soon after voice clipped by calendars. Mrs. Hale were addressing the automation. For what it's worth, the internal record reflects your file. Notice on hand revised contracts. IR 41. Thank you, I said. One more thing. If public misstatements and vendor labeling remain unresolved within 24 hours, I'll request a temporary hold under material misrepresentation. That clause exists for a reason. He didn't argue. He didn't need to. I drafted the demand letter in the same calm hand I use for grocery lists and memorial notes. Subject line retract, false sponsorship, claims and remove, name from PR. I listed exhibits like stepping stones across a creek, the original headline, the corrected headline, the call summary, the 2 vendor notices, the amended contracts, the notarized notice IR 41. I cited the clause the venue keeps for moments exactly like this, material misrepresentation, and the sentence that matters to anyone who has ever been asked to pay with their dignity funds, if any are discretionary gifts, contingent upon the mother's honored role, not a guarantee. I set the send for morning because a calm line lands harder at 8:03 a.m. than any midnight flare. Dinner was simple. A peach, a few crackers, a sliver of cheddar. I watered the fern, switched on the porch light early, and pressed the folder flat on my desk so the pages wouldn't curl overnight. There is a kind of strength you earn by lasting. You learn which words to spend and which to save for the sentence that moves the room. I saved mine for morning and let the house settle around me like a hand over a racing heart. I set the folder by the door for dawn. If truth couldn't find a microphone policy, would by pausing their dream with one sentence. 8:03 a.m. lived in the subject line before the coffee-cooled pause booking material. Misrepresentation pending correction. I read it once more, breathed and pressed, send. The whoosh crossed my quiet home office and entered inboxes that had mistaken optics for truth. I sat still, palms flat on the desk, watching the thread refresh. I waited there. Within a minute, the auto-reply returned in gray status hold, verification required. A beat later, Travis followed with 2 sentences that respected daylight and documents. Received. Will review artifacts. I screenshotted both and filed them in my folder, Lacey Venue Records. There's a comfort that comes from placing the right words in the right place. It steadies the hands the way prayer steadies breath. I printed the notice and clipped it to yesterday's packet. Outside, the oaks along the street stirred in a small wind. I wasn't ending anything. I was asking the system to use its own rules. At 9:41 a.m., a new subject marched in donor alignment V3. Aileen's email was breezy, the tone of someone who treats velocity as virtue. I opened the PDF and met the sentence that tried to spend me again: lead gift bride's mother committed. The font was elegant, the lie clean. I let the slide sit full screen until my pulse returned. Then I took 3 captures banner footer revision time. Focus chases fury out of a room. Please see. Evidence Packet A. I wrote stacking the story as dates the blog headline and timestamp. The hot mic log stamped 1342. IR 41 with the manager's signature, revised 1 and revised 2, with the guarantor language buried and then erased, and now donor alignment V3 with my name where it did not belong. I asked for a written correction and 1 public line funding details confidential. The mother is not a sponsor nor a guarantor. I pressed send and waited without pacing. Just past noon, Shannon shared a view-only link to the access tracker. The sheet wore color bars and codes that looked official enough to pass for wisdom. I found my row and read twice roll vendor comped. Notes provide check on arrival. I did not curse. I opened the revision history and took a full capture with the time overlay. If a thing can be misnamed, it can be renamed. If a note can appear, it can disappear with a trail. My reply all was 2 sentences. Replace my row with roll mother of the bride guest. Delete the note. Provide check on arrival. Send a time-stamped export. I attached the capture and added status remains hold pending these corrections and the restored maternal program slot. At 2:17 p.m., the phone rang. I put it on speaker and wrote the time at the top of my pad. We're maintaining the hold Travis said voice, even the sound of policy over temper. Planner must correct the donor list, the tracker, and the run of show within 24 hours. Please email the exact wording you'd like for your tribute. 2 sentences will do. Thank you, I said. Here are the words: for the mother of the bride, who raised the bride with steadiness and grace. We honor her place tonight, without price. My voice calmed itself. It felt like setting a photograph back into a frame after it had been pushed face down. Noted, he said. We'll expect the revised materials by tomorrow at 2. The call ended. The office was quiet enough to hear the soft tick of the wall clock. I stood and touched Harlan's initials on the safe once. Some anchors work by being there, not by being used. On my way back, I passed the fridge where the first hold email still rested under a magnet shaped like Texas. For a second, I remembered Lacey in 2nd grade, gluing a paper star onto a map, proud that she could place home. The inbox pinged. Aileen replied with the kind of language that calls itself collaborative while asking you to be invisible. We can soften the donor slide by removing dollar figures, she wrote, but we really need the look to stay cohesive. I drafted slowly. Cohesion follows truth. Please remove my name entirely and correct the tracker. The hold will lift when the program acknowledges the mother's place, not her purse. I attached the tribute wording and hit send. I made tea, returned to my chair, and checked the group thread again. Before 4, Travis's confirmation arrived. Hold status remains until items corrected. Security instructed not to accept funds day of from any non-signer. I filed it beside my notarized notice, then opened a fresh note titled, After the Hold. Not a plan for revenge, just a plan for peace. Attend the next meeting. Say less. Accept nothing that isn't written. Thank anyone who chooses truth over speed. Near 5, a text from Lassie, can we talk tonight? I watched the bubbles that didn't appear, the hush that follows a small courage. Tomorrow, I typed. Send me the revised files when you have them. I want this to be beautiful for you. The words were true. So was the boundary that held them together. When the sun leaned west, the live oaks drew lacework shadows across the carpet. I gathered the day's papers into their sleeve evidence on top, then the pause, then the small sentence that had become a shoreline couple's responsibility only. I slid the sleeve into the drawer and closed it with a gentle hand, the way you close a book you plan to finish. I turned off the lamp and let the room hold the quiet. They had a venue on hold, a list to fix, and 24 hours to remember I am a mother, not a wallet. The statement went live at 8:22 a.m., neat fonts over a gauzy photo of the venue. We value family privacy. Funding narratives are confidential. It never said my name. It never said they had been wrong. It asked the internet to look away. I tapped the time, saved the permalink, and let the kettle hiss. I used to read my daughter bedtime stories. Now I read press language built to tuck the truth in and turn out the light. I opened the thread and replied without adjectives. Attach 3 items, only the corrected run of show with Mother of the Bride tribute. The donor list with my name removed and the tracker row changed to Mother of the Bride guest. No statements. I have learned that feelings float. Attachments land. By late morning, I carried my leather folder to the same bank window as before. I'd like to move the remaining event fund to the Harlan Hale Community Scholarship, I said. The teller printed the receipt amount last 4 digits, 11:37 a.m., and slid it under the glass. I photographed it there on the counter date crisp as a courthouse step. Harlan used to tell me, if it matters, give it a name that outlives the argument. I named the money for something that would not ask me to disappear. At Riverside Oaks, the lobby smelled faintly of lemon polish and chilled flowers. I laid 2 guest key cards and a glossy badge marked donor on the counter with a short letter. These do not fit my role. The attendant scanned the page into the event file stamped received 1406 and handed me a copy. I didn't wait to be thanked. Keys open doors, documents close questions. My phone rang before I reached the lot. Darlie's voice was buttered and urgent. "We're planning a family values carousel tonight," she said. A click, and Israel joined. "Let's lift the hold and keep this moving." I stared at the steering wheel, its quiet circle steadier than any of their sentences. "Send the 3 corrected files," I said. "When the facts are in place, the hold lifts itself." I ended the call as a cloud slid over the sun and then moved on. At home, I posted 3 images, nothing more. The notarized notice, the hold email, and the bank receipt stamped with the scholarship. Caption: I am the mother. I am not the sponsor. Corrections pending. No exclamation marks, no heat. The comments filled with women who have stood at donor walls and felt smaller than their names. Some wrote prayers. One wrote, "I see you." I pressed my palm to the desk and let that be enough. Near dusk, Lacey knocked hair pulled into the same nervous knot she wore at 16 before a debate meet. "He says you embarrassed us," she whispered. Not a greeting, just a verdict she was asked to deliver. I offered her the printout I had made, a 1-page checklist, 3 lines, nothing personal. "This restores the booking," I said, "and it restores your mother's place." She read it, eyes moving as if across a bridge with 3 steady planks. "I'll try," she said. It was not an apology, it was a hinge. At 7:18, Travis emailed awaiting corrected documents. Hold remains. Decision deadline tomorrow, 5 Aurora p.m. The sentence sat like a clock on my screen. I flagged it red and walked to the kitchen. 3 minutes for the tea, as always. The house hummed the way old houses do, air moving through careful seams. I set tonight's papers in the folder beside Harlan's letter and the bank receipt. There is reverence, and there are receipts. When reverence fails, receipts still fit in a file. I took a pen and wrote the date on the tab. One small ritual no one can misname. Tomorrow at 5, the venue would choose corrected truth or no gala at all. I could live with either. Mothers live with harder things and keep standing. Somewhere, a car radio drifted past with a hymn I half remembered. I turned off the lamp, left the screen glowing, and let the deadline count for me. Before bed, I opened the binder one more time and slid in the stamped copy from the lobby. On a yellow sticky, I wrote "No DM responses. Attachments only." I stuck it to the inside cover where my fingers would touch it first. I pictured the room they wanted so badly, the amber light on the travertine, the names arranged like constellations, someone could point at and call a family. Names are not families. Families are the hands that show up, the voices that learn to say a name correctly because they care. I rinsed the cup, set it upside down, and listened to quiet answer. At 4:55 p.m., I sat at my desk with the files fanned neatly, the notice IR-41, the hold email, and the checklist. The kettle clicked on in the kitchen. 5 minutes left. I steadied myself by reading the paper trail instead of letting fear write new lines. At 4:57, the inbox lit. 3 attachments, updated program with Mother of the Bride tribute donor list, scrubbed of my name tracker row, corrected. For 1 second, I almost relaxed until I saw the line in the email body, Mother withdrew pledged funds, day of. A lie. I marked the sentence, circled the timestamp. At 5:01, I called Travis. I forwarded the bank receipt proving the scholarship transfer happened days earlier, not day of. He typed as I spoke, IR-41A false statement regarding funds. The hold remained. No debate, just documentation. By 5:30, we were in the glass-walled office at Riverside Oaks. Travis laid out the violations misrepresentation vendor, labeling hot mic exclusion now IR-41A. His ruling was clear, the planner's contract voided. The event could only continue under venue management with corrected files. Israel bristled. "Control," he snapped at me. I kept my gaze on Lassie. She finally lifted her head and said, "Mom, I want you there. I want the truth." Israel stormed out. Travis offered a modest alternative, the garden pavilion, small but honest. Venue run, no outside PR, my 2-sentence tribute restored. Lacey nodded. It's enough. At golden hour, we walked the pavilion's cedar posts, lights strung like stars. Lacey whispered, "I forgot you're a person before you're a role." My answer was simple. Then let's build it for people, not pictures. We agreed, vows my tribute, a meal together. Israel texted furiously. PR tried again. I archived both. Then a different notice chimed, the scholarship fund's first applicant approved. That sound felt like closure. That evening, under the pavilion lights, the small circle gathered. When my turn came, I read my 2 sentences, gratitude for love that chooses people over optics, and a wish for a marriage built on listening. Applause was soft, real. After the vows, I filed the signed program beside IR-41 and IR-41A, paper that had carried me when voices had not. They once told me to know my place. Now I do beside my daughter, where truth stands without a spotlight. Some victories are quiet, a corrected line in a program, a seat set with your name, and a daughter who finally sees you without the lights. I'm 66, and here's what I learned, the hard way. Dignity needs paperwork. Boundaries need timestamps, and love isn't measured in photo ops. When someone tells you to know your place, write it yourself calmly, clearly in ink. Choose people over optics, truth over approval, repair over performance. If this were your family, what line would you correct first? Have you ever defended a boundary without raising your voice? Tell me where you're watching from and what part hit home. If this story moved you, comment 1 or share why it didn't. And if you want more honest human stories, please subscribe to the channel.